This is a call for vengeance. Welcome to today's show. We have another story out there conditioning us for the upcoming grid shutdown. Obviously, I've covered this for years and years and years. They've been preparing people because that's what the news does. The news conditions you and prepares you for what they're about to do to you. And they all do it in all countries with a built-in boogeyman. The reason they do it is to prepare you so you're not in total shock when it happens, but so you could immediately point a finger at who's responsible for it. And they don't ever want you to point a finger at your own government, but your own government, mark my words, is behind what is about to come. Now, this is all the governments in the world working together. They've all been fully compromised. There's no government that is free from this. And anytime we see a government try to back out of it, pull out of NATO, try to show independence from the globalists, they go after them. I've covered, and I was removed from YouTube in the past, another YouTuber was, for covering what happened in Turkey, when Turkey was even mentioning coming out of the UN. The news is here to prepare you. It is here to condition you. The repetition is the key to the mind control. So we've heard this story before, and this is from today about the FBI director warning that Chinese hackers are preparing to wreak havoc on U.S. critical infrastructure. I can't emphasize this enough. They've been telling us with all these stories. I recently covered Dennis Quaid, the infrastructure with the solar flare. They're building up the perception of many different boogeymen so that there's a reason in your mind as to why the grid goes off. China, Russia, hackers with masks on, sitting in their parents' basement, waging cyber attacks for no reason on government infrastructure. It's the globalists who are waving this attack on the infrastructure because ultimately, as we've heard over and over and over again, they want to reset everything. And the only way they could reset everything and build a new infrastructure is to destroy the current infrastructure. At the World Economic Forum, over the last couple of years, they've openly talked about the threat of a cyber attack because they're planning a cyber attack on all of us. Here's from the World Economic Forum.
Global Security Outlook Report 2023. This is a result of research in collaboration with the forum's communities and our partner Accenture, in which we've interviewed and sought input from over 300 executives globally. The most striking finding that we found is that 93% of cyber leaders and 86% of cyber business leaders believe that the geopolitical instability makes a catastrophic cyber event likely in the next 2 years.
But still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services. Our society as a whole would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison to a major cyber attack.
Okay, so a story like that, them talking about it, they're not talking about it because somebody just was like, hey, I think there could be a cyber attack coming. And they go, oh, wait, what? Wouldn't they say, well, who's the threat of a cyber attack? Well, we're going to have to do something about this. They just tell you about this with no solution for the problem because they're the ones who are doing it. So they want to prepare you so that you automatically have somebody to blame. Because the biggest thing they fear is if you realize your own governments are working together, the Republicans and the Democrats, to destroy our way of life. They're working together to destroy our way of life. That's why they keep you divided over ridiculous issues, gender issues, race issues. They bait you. They distract you. And then when everything goes down, you already have built-in boogeymen. Again, Russia, China, solar flares. It will be them literally pressing an off switch for a period of time they've already designated. I'm sure they figured out the exact days. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 666 days that the grid is shut off for. That'll wipe out a lot of people. They'll be able to come back on after a long period of time where people are already, if they've survived it, the last thing they're even care about is their bank account because the majority of people won't. Your bank account will be at zero. Everything you own will be gone. And remember, the motto of this reset is you'll own nothing and be happy. It's ultimately communism under the guise of wokeism, under sharing, under equality, under equity. This is all psychological. So here's the story, because This isn't a news story, but this story just came out today that they're warning about it. And I cover this stuff because, again, the news is to groom you. The news is to condition you. This isn't actual news. This is them preparing you for what they're going to do to you. Here's Good Morning America months ago talking about this same exact story, which tells you what? They're saying the same story, using the same stories over and over again because repetition is the key to mind control. They're ingraining it in your psyche to believe in what you see in the bottom left corner, where you'll see a guy on his laptop. They want you to believe that it's this make-believe boogeyman that they've invented, when again, it's your own government who's going to pull the plug. Look at this.
Now to new concerns that China's hacked critical U.S. infrastructure in the search for malicious computer code and systems that control American power grids and water supplies. Our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, has more for us this morning. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, Michael. The fear is that hidden malware in U.S. infrastructure, like power grids and water supplies, are meant to disrupt possible future military operations, especially those that could involve Taiwan. The New York Times quotes an official saying that Chinese hackers have what is essentially a ticking time bomb that could allow China to stall military deployments by cutting off power communications or water supplies at U.S. military bases or even beyond those bases to those of just ordinary citizens. It was just back in May that Microsoft said it detected malware associated with China in Guam, where there's a huge American base, saying that it could disrupt critical communications infrastructure between the U.S. and the Asia region during future crises. The Biden administration saying only they are working relentlessly to defend the U.S. from disruption while urging public utilities to step up their cyber defenses. Michael?
Okay, so here's the story. The FBI director warning that the Chinese hackers, again, Christopher Wray, on Wednesday of this week, he's expected to warn that Chinese hackers are preparing to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm. China's hackers are positioning on American infrastructure in preparation to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm to American citizens and communities if or when China decides the time has come to strike. This is what Chris Wray said. So let's think in a world where this is all, really happening and it's not controlled and it's not, them obviously gaslighting you to believe in boogeymen. Wouldn't the United States government do something about this before it happened? Wouldn't they say, hey, we hear that China might be hacking our infrastructure, which would shut down our power grid, which would shut down our water supply, which would kill lots of people. We should go to war with China, or we need to do something about it. No, they just warn you about it. That's it. And nobody out there listening goes, hey, shouldn't the government be doing something about it? I mean, there are, supposedly elected officials who are supposed to be working for us, right? But instead, they're warning you and doing nothing about it. That's, of course, because they're the ones doing it with China. All the global governments are working together doing this. And the best thing about it in their minds that gets them, keeps them from actually getting caught doing this is by establishing boogeymen. So in every country, there's a boogeyman. Do you know how many countries look at America as the boogeyman, as the bad guy? Lots of other countries. Why do you think they show you the propaganda of people chanting and wanting death to Americans? Because they hear propaganda in their countries about how America's the boogeyman, America's evil, right? They just build all of this up. In reality, it's the global government that is wicked. It is the global government that is so sinister, people's minds would explode if they knew the things that these people, who are supposedly their elected officials, who they look at and they look up to, and they think that they've got everything organized and under control. Same with the Hollywood celebrities. These people are sinister beyond comprehension. Think of the most wicked people you could possibly imagine in your own mind. Maybe it's somebody you've heard of, like Jeffrey Dahmer, or something, some type of serial killer. Every one of them is more wicked and sinister than those people. And they're all in charge. And they're all put up on these pedestals. And the people out there trust in these people to do what's best for us. And that's not what they're doing. They're sabotaging the United States of America. Stories like this are preparing you for what they're going to do to you. I can't emphasize that enough. So he goes out there and he says, well, Americans' infrastructure is about to get havoc wreaked on it, right? There's going to be real world harm. It's going to kill citizens. It's going to destroy communities when China decides the time has come to strike. So then your job would be to prevent them from striking. You don't need to come on TV and warn us about it. But the reason they come out to warn you about it, they wouldn't even bring attention to it unless they needed to condition you with the story. Okay? But what citizens should be doing is holding all these people accountable, but they don't. because they're stuck in the left-right paradigm. So they're only sitting and yelling about the other political party and the crazy things that each side is doing, instead of saying, hey, your job would be to protect us from this. A lot of people could die from this. A lot of destruction could be caused. Babies, children could die from starvation, everybody. Hypothermia, dehydration, so many different things, right? But instead, we're just being warned about it, right? And it says the warning marks raise most direct public warning to date about the threat that Chinese hackers pose to critical infrastructure nationwide. So who are these hackers? Who are they? We've seen some of the propaganda they put out there. They just show a guy and they deepen his voice and they create this illusion in your mind of who it is. And nobody laughs and says, this is ridiculous. So you're talking to people out there, professional hackers. Why don't you arrest them? If it's all technology-based, shouldn't you be able to track and monitor them? I mean, we've seen the capabilities that you have with technology. We see all these crime shows that show us how you could do this and do that and track this and track that. So stop them from doing it. Oh, well, we can't. Well, why can't you? Well, we're going to run away and not answer the question because we just want you to believe that it's this guy with a hoodie on who's sitting in front of a laptop in the dark in some mysterious factory somewhere. And what is his goals? What does he get from this? What does some guy in Russia or China get from shutting off the U.S. infrastructure? Does he become a billionaire? Does he suddenly grow beanstalks that are coming, cash is falling off of it? What is the benefit of it? Oh, he just hates Americans so much, all the way over there, so much so, these specific people, that they just want to kill off America for no reason whatsoever. What's their motive? Don't you usually need a motive? You tell us in all these cases that we see in America, or all these crime cases, there's a motive. What's the motive? Well, what would their motive be? Oh, we don't need to establish a motive for you. We're just going to tell you who's doing it so you don't get suspicious and think it's your own government, who, of course, will be nowhere to be found when this happens, right? They'll be in Antarctica. They'll be underground. They don't address these topics. They just want you to know, okay, because they care so much about you, that, there's this chance our whole grid's going to get shut off by some dudes in China wearing hoodies that are in a basement that nobody could see, that nobody knows what their motive is, and nobody knows at all who they even are. Huh? If you believe that, then you probably believe when you put a tooth under your pillow that the tooth fairy flies through your window and puts cash under your pillow and not your mom or dad. Okay? Because the only people that believe these stories are the same people who would believe in the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, and Santa Claus. Okay? So the story is there again. Let's listen to how they're trying to circulate this in your mind. PRC hackers, Ray will say, are targeting things like our water treatment plants, of course, our electrical grid, our oil and natural gas pipelines, our transportation systems. So in other words, everything will be shut, right? They just did an experiment with shutting everything down, wanted to see how people would behave, would people uprise, would anything happen when they locked everybody down, would they believe in the psychosis that they were putting out there? And everybody did believe in the psychosis, except for some of us. And of course, we were all silenced during the psychosis to try to point out what was being done, right? So these hackers just want to go after water treatment plants. The hackers, their goal isn't money. Their goal is to commit mass genocide, apparently. They're psychopathic mass murderers in China who want to kill off millions of people. And they'll be able to sleep in. I mean, there isn't ever a motive for it. They just want you to believe that there's people who are this sick. And they're right, there are. They're called your government officials who were never elected in the first place, who were selected, who are members of secret societies, who ultimately want control over your life. And they are going to do this, and they are going to point fingers, and everybody's going to believe it like they just did with the outbreak. They'll give you a little, it was China, it was Russia. Well, it's very easy to point fingers at other countries because, again, other countries don't know what country media is pointing a finger at who. They just know that those people are completely out of your reach, so nothing can be done. Oh, it's Russia. What are you going to do, get on a plane to Russia? Is a whole... a couple thousand people, is a militia going to get on a flight to Russia or, go to Moscow or fly into China? Well, of course not. But if they knew what was happening here in America, well, they're fearful that armed Americans would stop these psychopaths from what they're doing. But again, as long as they keep you in the left-right divide, as long as they push stuff like this, nobody's brains can process this information past what they see. They hear it, they go, oh my goodness, that's it. Oh my goodness, they're going to, oh my goodness, okay. That's it. Instead of saying, you know what? Fine. If you don't want to believe in the stuff that people like me talk about, and you don't want to believe in conspiracy because you've been conditioned to think that it's all crazy and kooky, and you don't even realize why they've brought conspiracy theorists into the limelight now, because they're programming you to just dismiss automatically all of us who talk about this stuff and they think it's crazy because it's too much for you to process. And they want you to go smile and wave and say hi to everybody at parades and pretend that everything's good when it's not. Let's make this as clear as day. As clear as day. These people are killing you with a smile, okay? They can't establish motives and any of this other stuff, but all they need is the boogeyman in place so that the people don't rise up against them. And if they keep you in the left-right, nobody's going to rise up against it. So it goes on to say the FBI and the Justice Department have previously stressed their focus on preventing malign campaigns by the Chinese government and hackers. How convenient that the World Economic Forum, where all these world leaders are getting together, you have China over there, right? You have America representation over there. We've seen Biden there. We've seen Trump there, right? We've seen these guys shake hands before. So they go on TV, they shake hands, they do their nice Masonic handshake with each other, and they sit and talk. And then what? Oh, just rogue people in China? Wouldn't the Chinese government say, hey, we don't want any of you doing that? And let's be real. Citizens in China are monitored 24/7. Okay, this is the infrastructure that they want here in America. This is the blueprint in China. So the Chinese government would be well aware. So if China and all these guys are meeting together, wouldn't you punch them in the face if you knew about this? Wouldn't you go, hey, we're flying over to China right now because we hear stories that they're going to hack our grid and shut the whole infrastructure down. And as politicians, we don't want blood on our hands. We care about the American people. We're employees of the American people. We don't want our legacy to be that we killed off the entire country, the United States of America, and destroyed it. Oh, wait, that is what they want. That is their legacy. Because that vow that they take in their secret society lodges, their Masonic lodges, or whatever secret society it is to destroy the infrastructure and bring about a global New World Order infrastructure, the one we've all been warning about for decades and decades. So when we hear about China, then we hear about Klaus Schwab, the clips I played earlier, they're all talking about it. So shouldn't they be over there resolving that before it happens? Oh, right. No. They're planning it. Duh. They're planning it to happen because that's ultimately the plan, to do that to you and me, to bring America to its knees because the New World Order cannot thrive, it cannot succeed, and it cannot actually be built without this infrastructure in America being destroyed. Okay, so CNN has reported in recent months, federal law enforcement has used a court order to allow the Justice Department to update vulnerable software used by thousands of devices in the U.S. that are the center of a Chinese hacking campaign. The move by the Justice Department and the FBI is part of a broader government-wide attempt to blunt this impact, or the impact, of a persistent Chinese hacking effort, right? I mean, can't we just think of it from that perspective, like I said earlier? When you see our president's meeting with this guy, there's thousands of photos, Google image, Biden with Xi Jinping, right? Wouldn't this be on the docket if they've been warning for months about, hey, we're not talking about like a cyber attack where they, hack into you playing Call of Duty. We're talking about no water, no power, right? No food, no natural gas, so your generator don't work, so there's no gas, cars can't operate. They're talking about transportation not operating, wouldn't that be a topic? Wouldn't we declare war with the country if this was a threat that was lingering? No, we wouldn't, of course, because our government's responsible for it. They're responsible. But if you stay in the left-right divide, then you can't realize that both sides are compromised. So we could sit here, we could look at this story, we could see things like Dennis Quaid talking about grid shutdown, and nobody realizes that they're conditioning you for it. Repetition's the key to mind control. They've been telling us, they've been showing us predictive programming in movies, just like they did with the outbreak of a massive grid shutdown. And it's going to happen. The question is just when is it going to happen? And of course, think of all the built-in narratives. China, Russia, boogeymen, right? What is it going to be? Oh, election interference is another one. But ultimately what they want is global governance, artificial intelligence governance. So the infrastructure has to be brought to its knees. All one has to do is actually read between the lines of what they talk about at the World Economic Forum. Everybody out there loves to, it's become trendy now to talk about Klaus, which is part of what the alt-right media is. Right? They come out there, they do GIFs of Klaus Schwab. They're like, he's Dr. Evil, he's the real Dr. Evil, instead of saying, and they love that because it prevents citizens from rising up against it and saying, wait a minute, this guy's talking on national TV about chipping us and resetting everything, and nobody's going to own anything, and he hasn't been arrested yet. Instead, they just crack jokes about him. These people are sinister. If you were living in a time period with any of these other dictators like Stalin or what they tell us Hitler is, etc., right? What are you just going to put GIFs of Hitler in the time period, or do you think you would try to rise up against it, right? And I'm not just saying Klaus because we know it's bigger, it's deeper, it's guys holding strings. We got the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. We got the Vatican. We've got the military industrial complex over at Israel. But still, it's a joke to everybody. It's a joke. They don't understand how mind control works. They look at the news and the alt-right media and all these people who cover the news look at the news as if it's real. And then they believe the news. And that's what my podcast is really going to focus on. We're really going to dissect the news and make sure that people understand that it's psychological ops. It's all the news is. Nothing makes the news unless they're conditioning you and they're preparing you and they're subtly putting people in place to be the people that you're going to blame for it. Instead of realizing it, that the reality they're creating with the news is a false reality. It's a simulated reality that they're building up. They're conditioning your behavior. They're making you feel this. It's all done by design. What do you think? A story just happens and they're like, what do you call the news network? Hey, this is what, I'm calling CNN to tell them that this happened. Oh, and then CNN runs over there with a camera and gives you detailed updates on what's happening. It's all formulated. It's all scripted. And people are like, why would they script the news? That doesn't make sense. They script the news because that's how they heard you and condition you, okay? It's unbelievable that people they say the news is fake, but only when it comes to politics. Only when it's something they disagree with. Oh, it's fake news when CNN talks about Trump, right? But then they go to CNN when they think that there's an actual shooting or bombing somewhere, and they don't realize they're being conditioned then too. It's incredible. It truly, truly is. A reminder, everybody. A reminder to sub to my backup channels below. Good chance I'll get a strike soon. I will keep you updated on the podcast. I am working on it, formatting, etc. These stories need to be shared. People need to realize that they're not talking about this over and over and over again because as if China's really going to do it. They're going to do it. Your government's going to do it to you. They've all sold out, left and right. I thank you for being here again, everybody. Hope you're all well. God bless you as always and your families.